Okay, welcome to the Vermont Legislative Tourism Caucus meeting on Friday, May 7th. We are in our final stages of the legislative session. So today is really a discussion among caucus members about where we stand on a lot of the issues that are important to the hospitality industry. We have with us Joan Goldstein, the Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development, Amy Spear, Vice President of Tourism for the Vermont Chamber, Austin Davis, Government Affairs Manager for the Lake Champlain Chamber, and Patti, Komline, Government and Public Affairs at DRM, all of whom are advocates and supporters of our hospitality industry. And we want to get an idea of where we are and what we need to do to get things across the finish line before the end of this session. So I'm going to turn it over, Commissioner Goldstein, to you to start us off and where we're at with regard to specifically, I think we'd like to talk about the taxability of the PPP. That is, we'd like to make sure it's not taxable in 2021. The economic recovery grants, where we stand with regard to that, and the tourism marketing. So if we could, thank you, Commissioner Goldstein, for joining us, and all of you. And this is just a discussion, so I'm watching for hands as well as, you know, people can just jump in. I'm sure we're all well aware of how we can have a good discussion here today. So thanks, Joan.
Thanks, Representative Sherman, and members of the caucus. So on PPP taxability, as you may well be aware, is part of the miscellaneous tax bill that is with Senate Finance. I don't think they voted it out. It might happen today. As of yesterday afternoon late, I think they took a straw poll and unanimous that they will not tax PPP. So thank God for that. And let's see what happens, because I guess that'll go back to House in conference, because there are some differences between the two bills. So big on that one. So it did come out in committee discussions. There was a belief that many other states were taxing it, and that is not true. That was not found to be true by Graham Campbell, the joint fiscal analyst, as well as Commissioner Bolio. So I think progress there, and good news for many of your constituents. If there's no questions on PPP, I'll move on to the 10 million. The 10 million that was appropriated in H315 for the economic recovery, what we were calling GAP funding, and now it's called bridge funding. We are busy at work getting that up and running into the system. We expect it'll still be a couple of weeks before we're able to launch. We published the guidelines to that. They're on the ACCD website, and I could find the link and put it into this chat. But basically, as per the H315 or Act 9 statute, the entity would have to show a tax loss in 2020 in order to be eligible. And in that, we will be adding back. All right, so let me start all over. It's basically based on the net income of 2020, and we will be adding back to that net income any non-taxable relief. So, for example, if they got a forgiven PPP, we're going to add that back in. If they received a restaurant stabilization grant, we have to add that back in. And so the rationale is that all the other assistance is already taxable, so we don't have to add back in prior grants, what have you. But it's basically the award will be based either on 3 months fixed expenses, 150,000, or what we're calling the adjusted net loss. The adjusted net loss being, what was their loss? Do we add back in the prior PPP forgiven amount, not the loan amount, but the forgiven amount? And do they still have a loss? If they do, they continue to be eligible, and that creates the ceiling. So it's like the lesser of those three parameters: 150, 3 months fixed expenses, or what we're calling adjusted net loss. It is a bit complex, and the reason for the complexity is that the legislature wanted us to take into consideration the prior assistance, and we didn't know a fair way to do that, since it also stipulated that we had to base this on tax loss. So there are some things that are bound by the legislation that we can't control or adjust. We would have preferred, of course, for the agency to have a bit more discretion. so that we could change guidelines if this was not amenable to most of the constituents, but that was not the case. So we are working forward on doing that. The first 30 days of this program will be only open to those who didn't receive any prior assistance. The idea behind this was to get the help to those who didn't get any help before. And then after 30 days, we will start in with others who did receive assistance and will have to be doing adjustments.
Okay,
Do you want me to stop there?
Yeah, we got a couple of questions here already. Representative Austin.
Yes, I have to leave for committee early today, but I'm wondering if it would be appropriate or helpful for the caucus to write a letter in support of not taxing the 2021 PPP loans, if that would be helpful.
I'm certainly amenable to that. I don't, if the Senate is going to do it, it might be a letter to our House colleagues, obviously more than the Senate, if the Senate has decided that they're not going to. Austin might have an answer for that. His hand just popped up. I'm assuming that might be, Austin, do you have something there?
Yeah, I think that'd be, fantastic. And I can help provide some, just some FAQs and some other language. Some of you probably have seen the letter we sent with about 55 other organizations asking the legislature to not tax PPP in the wake of H315. Certainly I think, as Commissioner Goldstein said, there was a positive straw vote last night. However, the House Ways and Means Committee has been exploring ways in which they can still tax some level of PPP, and that just creates a lot of very complicated tax scenarios that are very difficult to talk through. And so it would just be preferential if the Ways and Means Committee conformed to what the Senate committee did. And as I was saying earlier, there is a provision that was recently released by the U.S. Treasury that allows federal conformity with federal tax code to be an allowable use for ARPA funding. So at this point in time, not taxing PPP wouldn't have actually cost the state anything because it was already included in the revenue forecast that was created in January. However, even if the committee wanted to find new revenue by taxing it, at this time, as of that recent Treasury announcement, they actually don't even need to do that to find the new revenue. That's an allowable expense under ARPA to cover what would come in as tax revenue if they were to tax it.
Okay, thanks, Austin. So Representative Austin, that is something I think Representative Jerome and I will discuss, and we'll maybe draft something up and send it out and see if caucus members would like to send something to make sure that we're that we're in line. Yeah. Representative Harrison.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. Commissioner, I just want to clarify the economic recovery grants, and I'm just going to the link that Austin forwarded on the guidelines. But did you say you either had to have a loss in 2020 or had 3 months of need in 2021? Can you just clarify that? The reason I ask is I recently got an outreach from a constituent as a lodging property, and he had actually ended up with PPP and stuff 2020, like a break-even status, may even been a little bit to the plus, but 2021 has been a disaster thus far because of the ski season and other things. So I'm just trying to figure out if there's still a window there or if that 2020 taxes closes it.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to urge everyone to do is to apply. And the reason for that is we want to understand how many people fall into that category. We were at first shocked to learn that lodging properties would actually show a profit last year. That doesn't make sense to us, especially if they've been closed or operating at 10% capacity. Obviously, there are going to be situations that may make exceptions, and we'd want to know about those so we could be informed. Because the way the statute reads, it needs a tax loss. And we interpret that to mean when we look at their 2020 tax returns, the bottom line needs to be negative. So, and our understanding is if someone received PPP, that does not count as income, right? And again, as we know, if it's forgiven, it's not taxable. So we are adding that back in. So it is tricky. And part of it is we don't have discretion. Now, the next 20 million, which I believe Sarat can put into H159, which will head to House again. In that 20 million, there is some flexibility that he's put in, and I have to look at the words again, but it was something like we had some ability to make adjustments. That's rather vague. And all along this whole process, we've been a bit whipsawed, I have to say. I don't know whether the body feels we're being too liberal or too restrictive. And every step along the way, we've gotten mixed messages. So I just think we're going to work with what we have. We want to collect the information and then make a determination on how to go forward. But the decision to put in tax loss definitely came through. I forgot whether it originated in House or Senate, but it's held fast throughout. And that's what we're working with. And I don't know of another way to interpret tax loss other than looking at their tax returns to see if there's a negative. In H159, if we have the ability to make any adjustments, that could help, because again, the first 30 days, we're only going to be serving folks who didn't get anything. So it's less of an issue. And then after the 30 days, we could make adjustments. If H159 gives us that capability, we'll have to regroup and see, how many people fall into that category that they actually had a gain. And if they had a gain, are we really, the purpose of the funds are to help people who are actually losing.
So Joan, so the 10 million, the bridge funding is already there. It's already, those guidelines are already there, and it's already law, and it's going into effect as is with a tax loss. The
Right.
20 million, which in my view is clearly not enough, but that's another issue that I think we should address. But now we're on to the other regular economic recovery grant proposal that's in 159. So actually, Patti, Patti, can you jump in here?
Yes. So, hey, everybody. I represent wedding and events people and also lodging. Representative Harrison, I think I know of whom you speak. And I want to just thank Commissioner Goldstein for all of her. It's incredible to watch her in these committees. Talk about whipsawed or whiplashed, actually. It's a real challenge to try and meet the expectations or for all the committee members. But that formula, I won't go into the weeds of it. It is problematic for some people, and I really do appreciate the long conversations Joan and I have had about trying to fix it. The 20 million, Heidi, you mentioned, is not enough. The governor met with our people because they're so frustrated that the border states were open, and so they had to turn down business to the border states, and they were concerned about the grants. And the governor said that's why you really have to work with the legislature to approve the grants. And then it was down, even though they accepted there was 500 million of unmet need, it was 50 million. And then in the Senate, they said, Senator Sorokin came into the committee and said, we decided, and I'm not really sure who we is, but they decided it would be 20 million this year and 20 million next year. And we didn't really understand why you would split it up when the need is imminent, it's already realized the expenses. And then the second 20 million just went away from the conversation. So we all recognize that this 20 million is going to go like that. And we're concerned that restaurants are not all going to be able to get those grants because that's going to be oversubscribed as well. So they're going to have to get onto this line. In 315 for the gap businesses, I would say all of our businesses are bridges because they're trying to get over that bridge to get to the other side. It's 3 months of fixed expenses, but they're very limited fixed expenses. It doesn't even count things like property tax. So for a lot of the lodging people, that is a huge expense. So we've asked for 6 months of fixed expenses to be covered. since the shutdowns and the travel and gathering restrictions were in place for 6 months. So we had asked for 6 months. We had asked for expanded costs be included, fixed costs. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just want to be clear here because this is not regarding the 10 million. The 10 million is already there. We're talking about so is the formula then, so that's pretend like you're speaking to people who aren't really sure about this stuff, but is the formula under the 20 million the same as the bridge grant formulas then?
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, they're using that for the.
You're using that. Is there another, obviously you're talking about adjusting that formula. Then.
That's what the businesses need. And
okay. So we need, okay. But the 10 million again is already there. So that's, we need to understand this formula and see what kind of changes should be made to help our hospitality industry. I guess that's what, so you're asking for, instead of the 3 months, you
6 months, and that is I recognize that's a challenge for ACCD to just keep, as Joan and I had conversations, to keep tweaking this formula is expensive and problematic and time consuming. But that's what they feel they need. And the cap is at 150,000, which people are going to max out very quickly on that as well. So it's just, the bottom line is it's just not enough. These are people that have obviously the struggles they've had for the past year. I've listened to them, been counseling them. I mean, it's pretty horrific, their stories and the debt they've accrued. And now, ironically, they're challenged. And I'm thinking you may have read in the paper how some of them are talking about having to, they're not able to be open full time because they can't get workers.
Yeah.
So one of the 10 companies said he's turning down business now. So,
Austin.
Yeah. So, I think just to clarify what Patti had put out there, there was an H315, that 10 million. That 10 million was meant to be, the gap businesses, those that got no assistance. It was later expanded to have a second tier. So once all of those folks who got no assistance previously were handled in the first 30 days, then any other business could jump in there and apply as well. And it's really important everybody does, because we haven't really surveyed unmet need as a state since really the last round of economic recovery grants, which covered March to September. So there's a lot of time there that we haven't done any official accounting of the demonstrated unmet need. So the chambers, what we're saying is, come one, come all. You might not be prioritized for that first $10 million. However, you're eligible. And the reason why that's important is because we want to oversubscribe the program, get a new definition, a new snapshot of what the demonstrated unmet need is in the state under this definition that the legislature agreed to, with buy-in from everyone, from the whole legislature and the auditor. We want to be able to understand what the demonstrated unmet need is, and then hopefully meet that unmet need. And the first step in meeting that unmet need in our mind is at least appropriating the 50 million that the governor put in his ARPA budget proposal. The Senate's done 20 million. We want to see that go up to another 30 million to 50. And we put in a letter, the Lake Champlain Chamber, the Vermont Chamber, the Skiers Association, the Retail and Grocers Association, and VBSR and Main Street Alliance, asking appropriations to actually make that extra 30 million request. We've also asked that if once Commissioner Goldstein has gone through that first tranche of 10 million and then possibly that next tranche of 50 million, that she can report out, as she's actually statutorily obligated under Act 9, can report out how much the program's oversubscribed at that point. And what we would like to see is actually language that enables the Joint Fiscal Committee to meet during the summer and receive that report rather than wait until potentially January. And at that time, they can look at what the oversubscription of the program is and hopefully make an appropriation that will be able to allow some of that acute need to be met. And then I was going to say, so that's kind of what we perceive. And then I guess on top of that, like another priority is kind of what Patti's saying, which is, there is some folks that even with all of that, they're gonna, because of how the program's set up and all of that funding is flowed, some of them might run up against caps, which don't, which mean that a lot of their operating expenses are left unmet, or they might not be able to be helped within the narrow confines of what's fixed cost. And so the idea would be that in later iterations with this new funding, either the 50 million or what joint fiscal does, that the flexibility is there for Commissioner Goldstein to meet organizations where they're at.
Okay.
I think I just want to say one thing on this, on H-159, which is where the 20 million resides. I think Senator Sorokin, I didn't see the language posted yet, but I believe as of last night, he said he's open to some sort of kind of like, let's execute on 315. Let's, as Austin said, let's process, let's understand what the demand is and figure out how to help those where the 3 months is not enough. I don't have the language. I didn't see it posted yet on his site. I don't know, but he did say he is open to that. Whether he's open to the 6 months or something else, I don't know. I have not received indication of that. But Austin is correct. We kind of push back on that because we have to process this particular 315 and we have to get through that. And usually that takes time. So we can't run two programs simultaneously. Even if it is put into 159, we're talking about waiting until we process through these anyway. So hopefully that makes sense to you. But in terms of support for this, I think it would be support to give the agency flexibility so that when we find out either that we're oversubscribed or undersubscribed, we are able to switch. The way the statute is now, we are unable to do that. So yeah, that would be my pitch, but all along, that is not what we face in all of the testimony that has happened. You know, our hands are tied.
So Commissioner, let me get back to, let's, before we get into the formula or the how it's going to be distributed, let's get into the amount. The House, well, no. So the governor proposed 50 million. The House hasn't actually done anything. It was in the Senate with regard to these funds anyway, right?
Yeah, I can't remember where the House approves past 20 or not. I can't remember where the 20 came from, but it is currently in the Senate budget was 20 million.
So do you, and maybe Alice would know this, but is it possible to get that amount changed to 50 million in the Senate, or is that something that we're going to have to fight for in the House? To get the total that again, I'm just talking about the money, not the formula.
Yeah, the money.
The actual sum.
My opinion is be the House, but go ahead.
Alice, you're muted.
It would be the House.
It would be the House. Okay. Okay. Jim, any thoughts on that as Mr. Appropriations?
I believe we really had, I think we had 40 or 50 originally before it went to the Senate.
Okay.
Yeah, the Senate put the money in the budget, took it from 159. So I don't, and of course in the House, the money was in 159 for a lot of the various things. So I don't know, that's got to get sorted out in conference committee between, does 159 put the money in for the grants or does it stay in the budget? And I don't know how you increase it if we had nothing on the House side for this program and the Senate had 20 million.
So we're just.
Yeah, go ahead, Alice.
So we put it in the budget to make sure the money would be there in the end in case 159 didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's slow moving, 159, but the budget's already done on our part. And we put as much money in there from some of these bills that are hanging around so that it would definitely go forward.
I think the other thing is if we want to pitch, it is related a little bit to the formula, right? The less money we have, the less we're able to boost the award. You know what I mean? So it's like,
that's what I'm worried about, I think, because if we're not able to make changes to the formula that would allow for, the concerns that Patti expressed, and I think that a lot of our businesses are expressing, if we can't change the formula and we only have 20 million, then it's that much less that people are eligible for and can get. So at the very least, we want to get that bumped up to 50 million, which is still, not going to meet the $500 million unmet need that we have. So I guess anybody have any thoughts on how we, like you said, if it just is coming from the Senate and the House never had it in the budget, I wonder how we express I wonder how we get it. I'm sort of stuttering here.
Well, if it's in 159 or that was the vehicle from the House, House Commerce will still have a voice in that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Stephanie. Good morning.
We all are, Stephanie. You're muted.
Yeah, we were supportive of a much larger amount. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it.
Okay, Patti, again?
Thank you. It's my understanding the ARPA money, Jim, wasn't all confirmed when the budget left the House. Is that right? Because I think that then the governor's.
We used a bunch of it for different pots, but we didn't. That was just to free up, I think, general fund money in a lot of cases. But the governor didn't have his plan out there.
Right.
So really, the ARPA funding direction was taken by the Senate, and obviously that's going to have to all be sorted out in conference committee and hopefully get the governor on board with a plan as well.
Right. I think the governor's plan came after you all had the budget just about done. And I think
that's correct.
So the flexibility could be these ARPA funds were not really suggested at that point. And so I think I could argue on appropriations that you have a little more flexibility this year, being that it is an anomaly. That's what we're
this year is totally different than any other. So you can argue any way you want. But clearly on the economic grants, 159 is still in play.
But ultimately, the money has to be in the budget.
Well, it's got to be allocated.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry, but yeah.
I mean, we had it in the bill. We had money in H159 as it left the the House. We didn't put the extra, for example, tourism marketing in the budget. It was in 159.
Okay. Representative Peterson.
Yes, thank you, Heidi. I just wondered if there was a website where one could go and see how all these various programs fit together to give relief, because between PPP, H315, H159 and the budget, the old routine, who's on first, comes to mind here. I'm lost. Is anyone looking at the whole thing?
On the ACCD website, we attempt to do it. And I say attempt because it's almost a question of too much information, but we have no choice, right? So we've got information about the SBA programs. We've got our guidelines for the H315. Of course, we don't have anything yet on H159 because it hasn't been passed. So as soon as it is, and we try to pull it together. I mean, the other thing is once we launch, we will have a phone unit and we will guide people. But also once we launch, we do think a lot of the other programs are going to be done. Like PPP will be done, and restaurant revitalization will probably be spent down, shuttered venues. So, even though it sounds like it's confusing, I mean, our advice has been to businesses that should apply to every bit of federal aid that they possibly can. Those programs are much more generous. I'm
just trying to understand how the whole thing kind of fits together. Austin, is the website you put on the chat, is that the one to go to look through to find that, or?
No, that would be Representative. That would be the guidelines for the new GAP program. I think the way to look at this has been a conversation that's come up a lot in many different areas. I would say think of this as a water tank, and The tank itself is the amount of unmet need. The water level in the tank is the amount of relief that's come through. And that space between that water level and the top of the tank, that's the unmet need that hasn't been taken care of. So when we're thinking about this, a lot of folks want to say, how big is the tank? Or they want to say, how much water is in the tank? Those are really hard numbers to pin down. What's easier is to take your measuring tape and go along the side between the water level and the top of the tank and measure how much that is. And what folks did in H315, now Act 9, was create a definition and agree upon the criteria for that measuring tape. So instead of trying to figure out how much support's out there, instead of trying to figure out how much support is needed, it's just measuring the delta, the difference between in what business present. And that's why Commissioner Goldstein is doing such great work.
So we're going to lose Commissioner Goldstein in a second. I want to move to tourism marketing. Amy, I want you to jump in because I know you've been following this, especially, well, you've been following all of it, but I know you've been following the marketing thing. But Joan, do you have anything before you jump off about tourism marketing?
So the way it stands right now in H159 is that the ask has been, I even forget what the original ask was, but right now it's at $2 million. 1.2 is going to the agency, is going to the Tourism and Marketing Department, and 750,000 is going out in the form of regional marketing grants out to the region so they could do their marketing themselves. I don't have much more than that. Amy is probably much more well-versed, so.
And Amy, just a second, is the 1.2 in addition to the regular base funding for VDTM? Okay, thank you, Joan, for joining us, and we will be in touch. Stephanie and I will talk. We're going to talk to the rest of the caucus via email, but we'll be
all right. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.
Amy, can you jump in here with regard to tourism marketing?
Yeah, so as Joan mentioned, 1.25 for direct marketing to the department, and then 750 for the regional grants. Last week, I believe Senate Economic received a proposal or language from ACCD that would have guardrails on how the money could be spent, but it wasn't so prescriptive in 1.25 and 750. So we're encouraging for, it's great to have the guardrails on how the money can be spent, but that 1.25, 750 division, not being so prescriptive in that. So more 2 million goes to the department. These are the potential uses for it. If it goes across the finish line with that division of 1.25 and 750, one ask would be for there to be more time for people to implement that 750 in regional grants, because I think a report would be due in January. So that again gives a really compressed timeline to get the grant application up and for the recipients to actually be able to spend the money. And that time crunch was one of the biggest. I mean, everyone that received one of those regional marketing grants was very grateful, but the timeline was so crunched that they, a lot of partners, they could have done better with more time.
So Amy, the regional marketing grants are an addendum to the prior regional marketing grants, because they did the regional marketing grants in the spring, right? Or
it's a similar program, yes. So the 750 could be used for consumer stimulus. It could be used for regional marketing grants. It all depends on the regions, how they want to spend that money. So it puts 1.25 directly into the hands of EDTM, and then 750, I believe it's written for either statewide organizations or for local or regional entities could use that. But as it left the House, it was 2.5 to VDTM with very few strings on it, which that flexibility is important as you're really developing tactics.
Can you repeat that? As it left the House, it was 2.5 because of the heroic works of Representative Harrison?
Yes, it was. And there were very few strings on how it needed to be spent. It was 2.5.
I didn't quite hear that, Heidi.
Actually, Representative Harrison, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe this is for Amy or for Stephanie. I mean, right now on the budget side, the Senate just allocated the 2 million that is in 159 on the Senate side. I don't know where the budget conferees end up. We basically got 2.5 on the House side and 2 million on the Senate side. Is there a preference to just leaving it open like it was on the House side, whatever that final number is, or do you prefer to do the regional, marketing grants? So I mean, it's really going to be up to Commerce to figure that out, because that's all part of 159. And I know Commerce looked at this is probably a little different, the local purchasing incentives or whatever that they ended up scrapping. But
that was the piece that we did take out, the local, that NIFT program that was originally in the bill last year, and that wasn't well received in the committee. And then I mean, just trying to recall, I can't remember if we had, I don't think we had a set aside just for these regional marketing grants for
okay.
the regions, but I know that those were maybe more well received than the gift card program last time.
I mean, I guess the regional, I mean, if there was no strings, the state tourism could partner with regional, right? In the House version, right?
I think so. I can't say for sure, but I think so. I remember giving the amount for the tourism marketing, and taking out the piece about the gift cards. I can't remember about this piece.
Amy, if I remember, so like you said, the 2.5 had no strings. It was just directly to the VDTM, and they would decide how to do it. But it was based on marketing. I mean, it was focused on marketing, tourism marketing. So they could have done regional marketing grants. They could have expanded that program and done it again, right?
Yep,
but in the Senate version, they have to do it,
Correct.
basically. And you personally, or you, the Vermont Chamber, would prefer it to be, if it's going to be 2 million, to be directly to VDTM, and they decide. There's more
Yes,
flexibility.
they have the discretion to set up a program that would best meet the needs of the industry versus being so prescriptive.
Okay. Do you know where the regional, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Stowe area and the Mad River worked together on a regional marketing thing last year. And do you know where the regional folks are on this? Or, you're part of the Vermont Association of Chamber of Commerce folks, right?
Yeah, so the regional marketing dollars can be used really effectively. I think it was a great way in your region in particular, the Mad River Valley, Waterbury, and Stowe all came together to form a best of Route 100. So I think there's a tremendous value in those programs. I guess the concern is really more not that program itself, but how prescriptive that division of funds is. Okay. Because right now there's not a lot of flexibility for VDTM to design programs to maximize benefit for the industry on the marketing side.
Okay, and this is in 159.
Yeah,
and in Rutland County, the regional marketing was well received locally, but I understand it was difficult to administer, and that was a tough one.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of it had to do with the time crunch to administer it.
Yeah, so I think so too. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so are there any other questions before I guess I'd like to, I think what we'd like to do is consider and draft up a letter with regard to the PPP that would go to Ways and Means and leaders of the House, I suspect, and Stephanie and I can work on, and we can send it out to the caucus members, and hopefully people will join on. I would love to include somehow, or get, and maybe it's just a House leadership to include in that letter a request and a really strong request for 50 million for these economic recovery grants. I guess I'd just throw that out there and see if others are interested in it, maybe putting that in one letter, but those two things in one letter right now. And because I think this is going to be a fight. I mean, it's certainly, I know that the administration is very concerned about the 20 million. They even know that 50 million is going to be oversubscribed. So I guess I'd like to throw it out there. Anyway, anybody else have any thoughts on that? Don't all jump at once.
Heidi, it doesn't hurt to ask, and it certainly is our position to advocate for those who need this funding. Whether we get it or not is another thing, but if we don't ask, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Our committee was supportive of more money.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked that it got dropped down to 20. And
Okay.
I had thought it was 20 first year, 20 second year. I didn't realize that second year was bumped out too. So that's disappointing.
Okay.
It's the 20 million for the second year lasted about 5 minutes.
And then with regard to the funding, Patti, maybe you could just keep us posted on that. I don't know if, it sounds like it's really a difficult thing for the ACCD to change the formula for this particular thing if they already have a formula in place. It's
Right.
but maybe you can continue talking. Maybe there's more flexibility that we can give them anyway for language to put in. Maybe there's somehow we can advocate for greater flexibility or changes if necessary. Or as Austin said, with regard to joint fiscal committee meeting earlier to determine if there's more need and they can allocate more money or something. Or
that's what we're hoping for. The problems that she's had in Senate Economic Development arose from Doug Hoffer's critique of what real unmet need was, and countered that it wasn't 500 million, it was much less. And one of our members, Talina, she's spoken with you, companion before, treasurer for the Wedding Association. She called Doug Hoffer up and had a long conversation about how her industry works. And he conceded that he was focused on manufacturing. It didn't apply to hospitality. And we tried to get him back into committee, but he didn't want to talk, I guess. So that's been a problem for the commissioner in there. So yes, more flexibility would be helpful.
okay.
People feel really beaten down.
And then with regard to tourism marketing, the 2 million, I think maybe Stephanie, we're just going to kind of leave that to you and Jim, if it's appropriate in the in-house appropriations, if you have some, and maybe what you need from us, if you need anything from us, but 2 million is certainly not as good as 2.5. It would be, how it came out of the House is certainly something that I would support, but I don't know if I'd like to focus our letter and our strength as a caucus, maybe on those two, the economic recovery grants and the PPP, maybe. And then we focus individually on the other things if we.
That makes sense.
Okay. Okay, before we all adjourn, I think, although Stephanie and I haven't spoken, but I'm thinking that this might be our last meeting as a caucus, because we're really at the home stretch. So I just before I go into that closing, I did reach out to Commissioner Pichek again with regard to our request to open July 1 instead of July 4. I haven't heard back. I'm hopeful to hear back. I also noted in the email that we are at the place where the June 1 step 3 is supposed to happen. We are at that place with regard to vaccines. So I'm asking, I asked if there's any intention to move that date up as well, because we are certainly in the position with regard to our vaccine rate to move that date much forward, much more quickly. So I will let the caucus know what I hear from Commissioner Pichek and the others. And I'm hopeful that both July 1 will be I think we're all hopeful that July 1 will be announced as the as the last date, as the no later than as our full reopening, but even sooner if we continue to meet the vaccine rates, which we are. And in my view, at least how I'm reading it on the Vermont Department of Health website, the vaccine status, it looks like we are at the place that we can open now to the June 1st step 3. So I don't know if the administration is planning to do that, but I'll let the caucus know what I hear from the administration. So, Jim, sorry, Representative Harrison.
Yeah, in the event that this is the last Tourism Caucus meeting, I think we just owe you, Heidi, a huge shout out for spearheading the caucus this entire session. So thank you for keeping tourism front and center in all the related industries. So thank you.
Well, that's very nice. I will say it's been a pleasure doing it, and all these people, all the guests on our call today, Austin, Amy, Patti, the commissioners, everybody who's been there for us as we do this. And then of course, Stephanie, who's been an immense help as I've tried to figure out what we want to learn and how we want to do things, and you, Jim, and Matt Byron with his help throughout this whole time too. So, and all of you, thank you so much for your support for and advocacy for the hospitality industry. I don't think we'd be where we are right now as an industry in this state if it weren't for the administration and its support of the hospitality industry and the advocates and and us as legislators and legislature for really putting it at the forefront, understanding the importance of hospitality and tourism. And I think that's actually the silver lining of one of the silver linings of this pandemic is I think Vermonters really, truly, including many in the legislature who didn't necessarily understand in the past the importance, and they now do understand, I think, better, much better, and it'll be easier, I think, in the future to advocate and be successful. So, okay, so thank you all. Stephanie and I will be in touch, and we'll work out a letter, I think, and we'll send it out, and then we'll get caucus and if you all hear things, please let us know. These last 2 weeks, things move fast. For all you freshmen, it's a lot of hurry up and wait, but things sneak into things. Patti McCoy can tell you that. Patti Komline, who was in it before, we can tell you it moves fast, but it also moves slow. It's a lot of hurry up and wait, but things are snuck in. If you hear anything that's coming in that could be detrimental or could be something that's important for us, let us all know. So, okay, thank you all. We will be in touch.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us every week.
Yeah.
Great to see some support.